but I have one of those intake clerks. She is taking pretty much all of the calls, and I have another officer stationed in that office now too. And I moved my second clerk over to a separate part of the building so she could focus on if there's a friendly stray that somebody will hang on to, they get forwarded to her so she can give them the resources that they can use while that pet is staying with them. And then she's also getting all of the owner surrender request calls so she can try to defer them to either get them information that they need to keep them or give them the resources to help us find another resource for them besides the shelter. So, and then we actually contacted somebody on one of these calls mentioned Mission Reunite, which was like a fantastic resource for me that I didn't know about before. So I looked them up and saw a couple of their videos, and then I actually contacted them. And so Bridget from Mission Reunite is going to have a Teams meeting with us and a few of our volunteers next week to start outlining a lost and found volunteer program, so that we have a team for those finders or people with lost pets who may not be as technologically competent, so they can go out and take pictures, they can scan for microchips, they can help post on those social media pages and on our lost and found page and kind of help track those and, you know, be a resource for them so that they don't end up coming to the shelter at least right away.
Can you tell us all where you're from and what your intake is?
Sure. San Marcos, Texas, and our intake's about 5,000 animals a year.
Jean, do you know if that's a service that they're offering to multiple shelters or just sort of a special partnership that they've worked out with you?
I think she's probably open to it because it was pretty easy for her to offer that services. I originally reached out to her because they said something about grants on there, and I was like, ooh, if I can get a grant for this, then I can definitely get the city to do this. But she said, I just happened to catch her on the same day that they were having a board meeting. And so she had offered this, and they already have a bunch of training on there for a similar type of program, but she's going to walk us through, you know, creating an SOP and setting up the whole structure of it and everything. So I would imagine, I don't know why she would be opposed to helping other shelters. Just hopefully too many people don't contact her right now. So we still have her.
Right. Get in early. Yeah, that's great.
Please use her. She's super nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, their website is phenomenal. I mean, it has so much information on it. It's so sad that it's not more widely known, you know, because it tells people exactly what to do and how to find a pet that's been missing for months. It's incredible. Really worth knowing about. I put the website in the chat.
Anybody else want to share about strays to Faith's question?
I have a question for Cynthia. She put in the chat that you took her course. What course is that? Can you share some more info on it?
I think that question was for Cynthia. Cynthia, you said in the chat that you took the course. What course are you speaking about? Where's Cynthia?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute. I've never spoken in one of these meetings before. Yeah, Bridget Watson held her course. It was called something else before Mission Reunite at Contra Costa County Animal Services, and I attended it as a visitor. I don't work at Contra Costa, but I work with them, and I thought it was just incredible. And I've actually got to know her pretty well. I even visited her where she lives here in Northern California, but it was pretty straightforward, but when she really lays it out well, and it's, you know, a very I thought very structured in the sense that you know exactly what to do. Do you have any more questions? I took it a couple of years ago. She also held the course, I believe, at the City of San Jose too. And this is when it was called something different.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Who else is setting up programs? I guess one thing, if we could use the reactions, it would be really helpful to know how many people are in a government-funded shelter that is sort of, responsible for loose animals versus a nonprofit that has intake that you intake what you want. So maybe let's do the municipal, the government-funded one. If you could do a reaction, that would be helpful. Like I don't know, whatever you want.
And those reactions are at the bottom of the screen on your bar. You can click a clapping hand or a thumbs up if you're a municipal shelter.
Okay. All right. And then we'll let those disappear, and let's do another one and find out how many people are the nonprofit with intake. Okay. So we've got like 4 munis.
Stephanie says she can't find the reaction, but she's also a muni.
Got it. Yep. She's one of the 4. Okay. So who's a nonprofit? Working in a nonprofit? I'm not sure the reactions are working very well. Looks like you. Okay. Well, I was just trying to get a sense of what people might be feeling. Okay, so who is starting to do something about strays other than the old method, whether you're a nonprofit or a municipal? Like, what are you doing, I guess is the real question. What are you doing, especially if you're a nonprofit? I think it'd be really interesting to know who's doing different things as a nonprofit or a rescue group.
We are going to be launching some new programming around, we're moving some staff into more of a rehoming counselor, and then also another staff member into a found pet counselor. And really doing some PR around that whole thing, because I think that the public is going to need, I've gotten a slight heated conversation this morning from someone that just wanted us to go pick up a dog. And so coaching them through, and she runs a lost and found pet page. So coaching and working with our community to get everyone on the same page is going to be really helpful and speak so that we can speak the same language. So that's kind of our next step, is making sure everyone knows we're not just going to go pick up the dog.
Mm-hmm. How are you getting people to rally around you? That is one of the questions that I have, is sort of how are people starting to pull their partners together?
So we have a coalition in our county, and then we also have a larger coalition in the St. Louis area. So we actually are doing something similar to this, where we're going to do a coalition-wide roundtable and then break out into breakout groups, one of them being focused on lost and found pets. And so the goal is the entire coalition in St. Louis will have the same checklist of things. Post to this website, call this number, list here, so that we're all speaking the same language. My internet is awful today.
Is anybody else starting to pull people together, other stakeholders together, and how is it going? I think there's some fear around it because, people love to just beat you up for whatever you've got going on at the moment. But yeah, I'm wondering who's seeing success, and maybe the ones that aren't seeing success can tell us what not to do.
Sorry. So sorry.
It's okay. Anybody pulling people together? No, not yet. Okay. I'm thinking around like pulling together other organizations to talk about how gaps can be filled in the community with lost and found or rehoming or keeping pets with their people.
I see Michelle
Can you hear me?
to say.
Yeah, Michelle's just
Dr.
laughing
Ivy,
right
can
there. I
you
want
hear
to
me
know what
today?
Michelle's laughing about so much.
No, I was just laughing when Ellen said, like, maybe you are afraid of a stakeholder Not so much afraid, just very wary. So we're in Norfolk, Virginia. So my advice to you would be don't move to Norfolk, Virginia. Just kidding. I'm here, it's great. And we are focusing on pulling an entire regional, well, we started with the Hampton Roads areas, which is like 7 cities, I think. Only been here a little while, but all the area resources, so pet resources, retention, and private rehoming, and what to do if you find a pet, so a lost animal. So I have been getting those resources all together in one big guidebook. So hopefully we'll be able to put that out to everybody so everybody can use it. And we'll never be on the same page exactly, but we'll all have the same resources. And I'm also, because we are limited by some of our ordinances, but I have been working with stakeholders who are able to do more services than maybe we are legally. And just working with them, developing relationships, and seeing how we can make their jobs easier by helping them with what we are able to help with. And so that they can focus their efforts on the things that we are not able to do as a municipal. So that's what I've been doing here, and that's no secret. I'm sure somebody's FOIA'd it already, so it doesn't matter.
That's awesome. And yeah, I love the idea of getting people together to actually talk about not overlapping services, like just trying to really fill the gaps. There's such a need for that in our industry. So that's great. Anyone else? It sounds like Julie was trying but couldn't get, okay, good. Awesome.
We've also been doing a lot with our communications, like on social media, and when people call me for, from the regular media for a story, is I've been trying a lot to emphasize that the success that we're having right now is because of what the community is doing. So I want to get the message out now that, you guys have fixed us. We don't have a capacity problem because of what you're doing now to step this up. So to kind of just ingrain that in them, that you keep doing what they're doing. And we don't really seem to be getting a lot of pushback asking people not to bring in friendly strays. We have 3 other communities that feed into our shelter. They all have their own animal control officers. And I've reached out to their leadership too and said, hey, just to let you know, we plan to continue doing this. And if you've had any, pushback from your communities, please let me know, or any feedback from your communities, please let me know. And I haven't heard anything. So I assume that means that they're not getting daily calls about people angry that they're not going to pick up friendly strays. So.
Are you getting, Jean, are you getting a lot of RTO in the field?
All of our communities actually had been doing that before. So they absolutely continued doing that. We have one little tiny community, Buda, Texas, who they don't, they bring in the least amount of animals, but they kind of went a little bit further. Like, instead of, if they've picked up a dog and they can't find the owner right away, or they know where it lives and the owner's not home, instead of bringing it to the shelter, they've got a crate at the police department where they've even actually kept it overnight for a little bit longer instead of bringing it into the shelter so that they can take it back to the owner. So, and it in the long run, it's going to serve them better if they're not bringing animals directly to the shelter, because they pay us based on how many animals that we have to house for them. So the more they can keep doing this, the less they have to pay for our services. So.
No, that's great. Is anybody else out there doing something like that too?
Well, I have a question, another question I'll just lob out there. And obviously, guys, this is supposed to be a discussion, and you guys ask us questions or ask each other questions. Like, we really want whatever you want to talk about. But I'd like to know if people are willing to share what their biggest worry is right now about trying to do something different than what you've always done before? Feel free to just type in. Yeah.
I'll go again. We have all the protocol in place, but what I'm worried about is the longevity of how this is going to last. And like our small staff, we had to split into two, mostly you all split into teams. And we have people really, my interim ops manager is also amazing. Our kennel supervisor and our foster coordinator, and like splitting that person is just kind of stretching people really thin, but also because they can't physically be there to guide that side, the other side of the team, or vice versa. There are multiple people. So I'm worried more about how to start reopening or thinking about long-term operations with such a small staff, and how we're going to keep that going if we even start letting people into the building as well. Because right now we're okay because we don't have to deal with the public, saying that not because we have to deal with them, but like we don't have to have people in the building to worry about, and customer service on that end of things. Everything is safe and contained, and everything is by appointment. But when we start getting busy, we're so limited. That's what I'm worried about. How are we going to cover all those duties?
Mm-hmm.
I know for us, it's Julie.
Ellen, you're muted.
It's okay.
Sorry, Ellen.
No, go.
It's Julie, I turned off the camera, so hopefully to keep the connection stable. But I kind of agree with what Michelle said, and I think for me, it's like just having a written game plan has been scary, because I feel like we put this out there, and it's so subject to just pushback and criticism and everything else. But it's like, I want something in written form that explains the why, the how, because as much talking as I've done over those last couple of weeks, because of all these amazing calls that have just given new purpose to going forward and doing things completely different, it's just that it's that constant pushback that gets exhausting. And it's more that than anything. And my team feels that too. It's, you're not doing your job. Generally speaking, if I'm not cussed out at least once a week, I probably didn't have a normal week pre-COVID. But even during COVID, at first, everybody was really nice the first, I would say, month and a half. And now it's like the tensions are there, you're not taking cats. This is ridiculous. You need to take these cats, and I'm not dealing with them. And why aren't you guys doing your job? And I'm like, we're closed. So that it's been interesting, because I'm trying to see the best in everybody. And I know they're frustrated, and I understand their frustration, but at the same time, it's like, this is real. They're going to kind of come back as soon as we open, and that will start all over again.
So the people who are complaining about cats, Julie, or really for anybody, have you guys put into writing what kind of cats you're going to take in when you do reopen? Cats?
So I told them that right now we don't have a vet, so we cannot continue our TNR program that we were pre-COVID. That we were doing everything then, but now not having a vet. And so I'm trying to get some funding together to try and do TNR outside of the shelter with the low cost spay neuter clinic, but they've been closed too. So this all has to go hand in hand. So I can't really say anything publicly until I know exactly, A, we've got the funding to continue that, and B, to be able to tell people, don't worry, we still have an answer for you. We are taking in anything of critical need, or anybody that's really being a kind of a jerk about everything. We're certainly taking those animals in. We're not turning all of them away. But anything that doesn't need to be in the shelter, we are turning away.
And can you share with everyone where you're from? And
I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm from Bakersfield, California. I'm in a weird position. Most people call me crazy, which is cool, because I run a nonprofit. I'm the director of a nonprofit shelter that is limited admission. Don't euthanize for space or anything like that. And then I also oversee the operations for the municipal shelter, but only the sheltering part, not animal control or anything. And so We are literally in charge of the shelter operations only themselves. Additionally, we have a partnership with the Bakersfield Homeless Center, where all of our kennel staff are people that have been through the Homeless Center program and are looking to get back on their feet, and those are our kennel staff. So it's a really unique partnership that I absolutely love. I swear by this program. But you can see the challenges. I have 2 different hats in 2 different ways. So one's municipal, one is not.
I'd like to point out Stephanie has a really good concern. Like right now, everybody is understanding and listening to us that we can't take in because it's COVID-19, we're closed, we have to social distance. She brings up a valid point. What do we do in 6 months, a year, when we're still saying we're not intaking? We don't get to use COVID-19 as our excuse anymore. What is our message? How do we combat that pressure?
I agree. I feel the same way.
Yeah, I think that's the big fear of just falling back into old habits. And so what, at least initially, and I hope we can continue it, is we've done the data and we found that in our communities that pets have a 300% more chance of finding their way back home if they stay with the finder than they do if they come to the shelter. So that's the message we're going to try to get out there over and over and over again. And when people say, why won't you take this pet? If we say, well, because it's got a 300% better chance if it stays where you found it, because that's where it went missing from, than if it comes here, then if, hopefully that they'll see that's the better option for the pet. Because most people that find a pet want to make sure it's safe. That's why they bring it to the shelter, because that's what we've told them that they have to do for the last 100 years. So just getting the message out now before this whole mess is over with, and so that they know that there's a better solution, I think I hope that concern will solve itself.
Well, and I feel like part of this is we need to buy ourselves time. And if we can kind of like rehab our communities in 6 months or whenever, hopefully we rehabbed our community, and so they're not used to bringing those animals to the shelter. We've provided them with other tools between now and then that we need to refine and create. But if we can rehab that community to where in 6 months, it's a thing in the past. It's just not what happens anymore. I know there's a lot of work behind that needs to happen. But part of this is we need to buy ourselves time to come up with a long-term solution. But we're, fingers crossed, rehabbing everyone to where this isn't what we do anymore.
I also think there's just so much room for marketing right now. Like if we haven't looked at our websites and those resource pages, those tabs on our sites in so long, that there's, people are mostly online these days, if they find a dog or find a cat and they're Googling answers, but if all we're saying, like if it's all outdated information, or, we're trying to figure it out ourselves, but the community education piece is huge in terms of not relying on AmPA or just Best Friends or ASPCA to do all of the messaging. But I think on a local level, we can do a lot on our social media to educate with infographics and even a couple times a week, just getting that message out there at least. So, but I think it's something that we're just so stretched thin right now and trying to figure out our way, that the outward communication maybe hasn't been looked into as much, but super important.
Are there some key messages or some key points that, like those data statistics that, they are X number of percent more likely to be homestaying or get homestaying with the finder? And are there any national like statistics or key talking points that everyone could maybe be sharing and putting out together as we try to get that messaging across? Because I do think there's a big need for PR and getting that information to the public.
I don't know that there's that, but I like what Kim said in the chat. Do we need new verbiage to help the public understand that this is not a matter of taking in versus not taking in pets?
Right.
So like you think intake, the only way I can help this pet is I have to take it to the shelter. So do we stop calling it, I need to take this animal to the shelter so it can be intaked and found? Do we as the shelter stop calling it intake even? I think Kim is right on target there with how do we change our perception, our language, our verbiage, and then get that out to the community as well. But then you're right, if we can put stats out there and stuff too, I don't know if people understand numbers as much. I don't always get caught up in numbers as much as language.
And that's what I think too, like we get so caught in industry speak that, is rehoming the right term and intake and all of those things. Are those the right words that we even should be using? We're considering doing a little campaign that's like real talk. Like, if a dog is found, if you find a dog, it's not stray, it just needs to go back home. Like those types of just like real talk, like basic messages to share with everyone so that they understand.
I think it's also a good time to be rethinking other language that we use. For example, surrender and relinquish your pet. I mean, I've worked in animal welfare for a long time, but I've also worked in human services. And when I say, maybe to a social worker, for example, well, maybe the client should surrender their pet, they look at me like, is this some sort of hostage negotiation? Or are we talking about like a gun buyback program? I mean, gosh, that's so harsh and aggressive, so, I always like to try and keep a set of fresh eyes and ears on how other people are hearing these things, because it really does often have a big disconnect with how the public is.
Well, we've even struck rescue from our vernacular. Like we don't even call it rescue anymore. We're not rescuing the dog, the family that loved it, but we needed it to bring in. So we do try to use the word intake, but intake maybe isn't the right word either. I mean, I think there could be a whole discussion on best words to use going forward.
I want to know if any of you guys are trying all these new things, but you're surrounded by other shelters who aren't. So you might be the only one in the area, and I don't know how many directors we have in the room, but you're the last one to hear about anything. People are always talking around you and about you, but never really to you. And it's never the intention to annoy, your fellow shelters in the area. You want to work together, you want to collaborate. But I feel like some of the things that I've learned a lot this last week, some of the things that we've been trying to implement have inherently annoyed our neighbors, which was never the intent. And I finally found out, but it's 2 months down the line. So what I'm trying to do is figure out ways to kind of be the happy medium, whereas we're trying to do what we're trying to do, also bringing them with, but at the same time, not being too radical about it and being like, this is the new way of doing things, just kind of finding that middle road. Maybe
I like that a lot. So I heard from somebody that I think this is just brilliant advice, that even if you have people that you're working with that aren't on the same page as a whole, they might not be, going for this massive change, that if you can ask them to, if you're starting community meetings or staff meetings, if you can ask them to come and present on the thing that does fit that they do. Since groups are tending to do so many different things, there's probably somebody doing something good with community work in some way, and maybe ask them to come and talk about that one thing and be the expert on that one thing. And that helps to just, it's really hard to pick on people when you're part of them. And so they're brought into the fold. And I think that's just such brilliant advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't been the best at that in the past, but I think it's a really great way to think about trying to get people to just start talking,
When it comes to the language stuff, I know we're really trying to look at the human and the pet as a unit, and we really want to kind of merge with human services, or what some people call social services. So I'm a fan of using the language that those agencies use, because that's what the public already knows. So for example, home-based care is what people understand for the most part, and that's what other systems that have kind of deinstitutionalized have used. It's the idea of we want to avoid providing the care in the hospital or in a nursing home or in a foster home, like an orphanage type thing. Same thing with community-based services. It suggests that you're not doing less, you're actually doing more. It's just the focus is on keeping people or pets in the community and bringing it to the neighborhoods and systems and structures that they already have and know. So I think the most we can mirror the language that's already out there, the more effective we're going to be.
That's a great point.
Michelle's point about sort of the groups around you doing things that are quite different and being in the middle of the road, there's often, it almost hints at two different vocabularies needed as we're opening up more broadly to the community, but trying to ride that line between people who are maybe a little bit more closed down and hope that we follow their lead a little bit more, that we're kind of bridging that gap and having to talk out of both sides of our faces. And I don't know if we have any thoughts about that sort of dialogue to our kind of in industry detractors or edge of the industry detractors.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I've really, you know, some set of people want you to put a label on it. Another set don't want the label at all, but then they all want the numbers, but then they criticize the numbers because then the animals are only numbers. And you're just like, which side? I don't know what you want me to do. And so I've really just trying to create like personal relationships with people so that they can have a better understanding. And I'm not just this new kid that came in trying to do like different things, but it's been so different. And I think I'm getting used to, you know, virtually meeting people, and these face-to-face, you know, video are much better, but you know, it's been different. It's been a learning curve for me, for sure.
In these communities where you're having that walking that middle of the line, middle of the road line, are you also hosting any kind of informational events for the community at large? I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder if it would be good to just talk to as many people that will listen sort of out there generically and make sure you're hitting on points that people are doing well within those two opposite organizations. It's hard though. I mean, the fact of the matter is that not everybody's going to be happy no matter what you do. It doesn't even matter if you did everything exactly the way they wanted you to. There's still going to be people who aren't happy. But I think that if you're making an honest and earnest attempt to try to work within, you know, everything in your community, people will notice that. I've been shocked by, you know, we are one of those at Austin Pets Alive. We're one of those organizations that is really, I mean, we're really far over into no-kill. And I've been shocked by this whole collaboration around this concept is really just letting all those guards down and talking about, you know, what we have in front of us instead of the bygones. And I think that there's something to just trying, maybe. Is anybody else experiencing that, having trouble or not being able to get past the old?
I've got some students, I'm not going to call them out, but who are chatting me privately saying, yeah, they are just getting ready for their municipal to go right back to same as it always was. And I think that's something that we talked about last week too, where nonprofits were echoing, we don't know what to do about it. And so I think I'm kind of curious about what you guys need from us to help you. That's kind of what I would like to know. Not that we have this, you know, crystal ball or the silver bullet, but
I do think that's a good point, because I think there's a lot of people that come on our calls and they want to do the right thing and they want to make the right changes, but they don't have the support above them to do the right things. I mean, I'm thinking of several of my cities, and of course I'm not going to name them out either, but I'm thinking of several of my cities where the staff are calling me super upset because they want to do the right thing, but somebody above them that has all the power says, nope, we're just going to do it because this is what we're supposed to do. We're paying you, intake them, do your job, shut up, keep doing your job, let's go.
yeah, my chat right now is just all private people going, me too, me too, me too, me too. I see you all.
Well, for those of you that are in a role, a municipal role, and maybe I'm going to pick on Mike Wheeler, but how would you recommend that nonprofits who have no control over intake into the municipal shelter reach out and try to bridge that gap?
I would say attend city council meetings, talk to city managers politely, nicely, as concerned citizens. That's the only way it's going to happen. It's going to have to start from the top down. It does upset me that more director role positions didn't attend the Maddie's Fund trainings, and that the folks they sent, even though the question they checked, yes, you can do all, you'll be able to implement everything when you go back, they weren't able to implement those. That highly upsets me. I think cities should be billed for all those fees back, but that's fine. That's fine. But I do think that if these nonprofits would become involved in the municipal side, attending the city council meetings, show up to any events. It doesn't have to be an animal related event. And I think that's where a lot of animal related nonprofits fail on the municipal side, is because they only show an interest in the animal side of things. And as a municipality, the way the government works, they want you to be interested in all of the community. And the more you're interested in all of the community, the more they're going to care about, no pun intended, but your pet projects. So if you show up and you show up at the Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting for the hospital, okay, meet and greets there, do all of those little things, and then you're going to build those relationships with the government leaders, and that's where you're going to get your backing, and that's where you're going to ask those questions, not at the meetings, but you're going to ask those questions before the meetings and after the meetings and outside the meetings and at the luncheons and places of that nature. And that's where business is really done, not in a public forum where you're actually humiliating the government. And I know in Austin that it took humiliation to get things done, but that's typically not the way things are done. Typically, things are done by not humiliating government officials, but by actually getting their ear outside of the business walls. That'd be my recommendation.
What are the things that are resonating with government with this model that you guys are hearing about? Whether it's your boss, Mike, or your boss, Michelle, what are you guys, what are the terms? What are the words, as we're talking about words, what are the words that are getting some traction?
I'm getting, that's not what we do. So that's what we're fighting against, is we're not here to help owned pets. We're here to help the stray pets and trying to get across to them that, but if we don't help them now, they're gonna become our problem, or they're gonna become intakes. Is trying to prevent that, which in the long term saves us money. So yeah, it's just getting past that's the way that we've always done things, and they're open to it, but they're so hesitant. It's the risk management and the legal departments are what really is the toughest nuts to crack.
Is there anybody in your government that is saying, that's not a bad idea?
Well, they're all saying it's not a bad idea. It's the what ifs. And so I guess it's what's always frustrated me with municipal government is, and I get it, and I get they have to protect those things, but it's like, if it's a good idea and I've got the plan in place, why can't we just do it? Why do we have to pick it apart and then put it back together again and, piece it out or whatever? So that's what's the frustrating part.
Well, and Jean, you in particular are really going through a stressful time right now. You've been awarded a grant. You've written out the best plan ever. You've given them every single ordinance backup. I mean, you've done everything. I've read it all, and her risk management is still like, maybe, no, I don't don't know.
And that's kind of my backdoor plan, is to keep writing these grants for this specific program and saying, hey, this is what we have to use the money for. You know, that's what they're giving it to us for. So I have to do this. But yeah, and thank you.
I was super impressed. I was very impressed. I thought I was going to go in and be like, maybe you should cite to this. Maybe you should. You'd already done all of that. I was like, whoa, she's already got all this in there. Why are they fighting her? So you did great on them.
I'll give you my boss's email.
Okay.
This is, I'm not going to call you out again. One of my students is chatting me, and I learned so much from you guys. This is a new one, so congrats. You know who you are. I've never heard this one before. Anybody else dealing with, so we've got a municipal who hasn't been allowing any adoptions at all since March, which is a problem, right? But then the overwhelming feeling is they're not going to consider going to a new system because then they think they're out of a job. So it is self-preservation to go back to the old way. Has anybody else heard that?
Yes, I've heard that. And I think it's because people are not, we're not articulating what we mean when we talk about the new way. We're not doing a good enough job saying that this is turning inward outward. It's not taking away inward work, right? It's not a net takeaway, it's a replacement, a better replacement. Anybody else have more eloquent words on that?
And maybe this will help them, and maybe they've already tried this, but what I kept saying is, this is a national conversation. This is what everybody else is doing, you know, so we don't want to be left behind when every other municipal shelter is grasping onto these new concepts.
Yeah, and with the hundreds of people that have come from all over, staff from all over shelters from the US, I don't think I've met one that was like, yeah, you know, I'm twiddling my thumbs all day and I have nothing better to do. Like, they're literally doing the jobs of 7 other positions. So, and maybe not doing them very well because they're stretched so thin. And we all wish we had more time for the hundreds of cats in our care and the, you know, hundreds and hundreds of dogs that aren't getting out of their kennels every day. So there isn't a shortage of work, that's for sure. It's just reallocating it. But I think we just have to remember how hard we've been working and kind of how poorly we've been doing our jobs because we've been stretched so thin.
Well, and it goes back to what Kim was saying about home-based care is, I mean, we could probably ask social workers, and it's not easy. They still have a lot of work to do. Just because they're not in an orphanage doesn't mean that they don't have the work to do. There's probably more work to do. You know, if we're looking at that human social services model.
That is so true. And as somebody who's worked in social work jobs and about to be a licensed social worker, yeah, it is more work. But the thing to emphasize is that it's more cost effective. I mean, like, just like we look at nursing home reform, it's actually, you know, I can't say that we are shifting away from placing people in nursing homes that don't need to be there just because we know just because it's the right thing to do. It's actually the most cost effective thing to do. So I think the more that we can be sharing with our elected officials that this type of way of doing business can actually be saving money and saving taxpayer dollars and reinvesting that money in other programs, that tends to get their attention. But I do think what we really need is a study that can compare, you know, looking at the traditional model of intaking animals and just trying to adopt our way out of this, and what it costs to, you know, the average cost per animals based on, you know, average scenarios, and then compare that with what it would cost to keep those pets out of the shelter with supportive services. Because, you know, based on the shelters where I've done this, the cost savings are like, for most pets, not all pets, but generally speaking, I mean, it's night and day. So if money is what drives the conversation, like we need more research that can show them this.
Do you have data from Iowa about the cost savings?
Yes and no. I did not do it for the shelter in general. I oversaw all the community outreach programs. So what I did do is I broke down, like, for each case, whether it was a veterinary assistance that we provided, whether it was emergency boarding for a crisis, or, you know, outward like public wellness clinics. I tallied that up. So I have some of it that I could share. It's just not, I think what we really need is the full scope of a shelter operations. Because I guarantee what we're going to find is that in most cases, not all, but in most cases, investing in these proactive preventative programs is going to be a better way of doing business financially. Roy, I'll get with you about the stuff that I do have though.
I would just add to that. I know that what I think Mike used the word humiliate, but what has worked over and over, and when we haven't been successful in getting a city to care about, a city government to care about what's happening in the animal shelters, generally when we're silenced and not able to bring people forward and say, this is not okay with me as a citizen. And I think that one of the most powerful things that we have that governments don't take advantage of is the ability to rally a larger voice. And how do you get people to come together, understand, it kind of goes back to really trying to get your community to come forward and be part of the solution, because the more pieces that they take on, the more outspoken they're going to be about what they want the future of animal services to be. And it's really difficult for the government staff to be the voice. But if you're able to have people around you that can carry that message to the mayor and to the city council members and the city manager, think about all the reasons why shelters are being forced to go back to picking up animals. It's because people are complaining. And so give them a different voice. Let them hear from somebody else. But if it's just the shelter director or somebody on staff at the shelter, typically they're pretty silenced on what they can do. So I would just add that don't underestimate the power of the people. And it doesn't take very many to get their attention. Think about the one person who's mad about not having a dog picked up. They get a whole bunch of things. They get heaven and earth moved for them. So anyway, just end with that. I know that we're ending the call, right? It's 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. This was fun. We should do this more often, where we're just talking.
No, this was a really good one. We had a lot of good conversation come up in this one. I saved all the links that got posted on, so I'll put them in our spreadsheet, Rory, that we have, just so we have the different links that were posted.
Excellent. And I saved the chat, so I'll share that with everyone that was on this call as well. Thanks so much, everyone. This has been really, really great. Hope to see all your faces soon.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Thank you.